The dust of the Arizona Territory swirled around Sophia Riley as she plunged the shovel into the hard earth once more, each thrust accompanied by the sound of her quiet sobs. It was 1885, and the 24-year-old widow had just buried the last remnants of her shattered dreams alongside her husband's wedding ring, a collection of love letters, and a small portrait all that remained of Thomas Riley after consumption had claimed him 3 months prior. "Damn you, Thomas," she whispered, her voice carrying no farther than the mesquite trees that dotted the landscape around her small homestead. "Damn you for making me love you, and damn you for leaving." Her hands, once soft and refined from her upbringing in Boston society, were now calloused and cracked from months of struggling to maintain the modest cattle ranch Thomas had proudly called their future. The small wooden box, now covered with dirt, contained more than mementos. It held her capacity to love, her willingness to trust, her heart itself. She'd rather bury it all than feel such crushing pain again. Sophia wiped the tears from her dirt-streaked face with the back of her hand and surveyed the land that stretched before her. 10 acres, 20 head of cattle, and a small cabin that leaked when it rained, which wasn't often in this parched corner of the territory. It wasn't much, but it was hers, all that remained of the life she'd chosen when she'd scandalized her family by marrying a man with dreams bigger than his pockets. As the sun began its descent behind the distant mountains, Sophia gathered her shovel and the empty water canteen. The trading post in Redemption Creek was a half-day's ride away, and she needed supplies. Tomorrow she would face the town and its pitying stares. Tonight, she would sleep in an empty bed and pretend the hollow feeling in her chest was simply hunger. She cast one last glance at the freshly turned earth beneath the old oak tree. "Goodbye," she whispered, not to Thomas this time, but to her own heart. Samuel Dawson winced as the whiskey burned a path down his throat. 3 days in Redemption Creek, and he was already wishing he'd kept riding. The saloon was loud with piano music and drunken laughter, a stark contrast to the silent months he'd spent trailing cattle from Texas. "Another," he said, sliding the empty glass toward the bartender. "You're drinking like a man with troubles," the bartender observed, refilling the glass. Sam's weather-beaten face betrayed nothing. At 32, he'd learned to keep his thoughts as closely guarded as his money. "Just thirsty," he replied. The truth was more complicated. After 15 years of driving cattle, breaking horses, and occasionally wearing a deputy's badge, Sam was tired. The war between Wyoming cattlemen and homesteaders had left him disillusioned about the changing West. When his old trail boss had mentioned a small ranch for sale in the Arizona Territory, Sam had seen it as a chance to put down roots before there wasn't any frontier left. "That Riley place still for sale?" Sam asked casually. The bartender paused, rag in hand. "Riley place ain't for sale that I know of. Thomas died this past winter, but his widow's still hanging on out there." "Widow?" This was news to Sam. His information had come from a letter written months ago. "Yes, Miss Sophia. Boston-bred lady. Too refined for these parts, if you ask me. Everyone figures she'll sell up and head back east eventually." Sam contemplated this new information as he nursed his whiskey. A widow trying to run a cattle ranch alone was fighting a losing battle, especially with the drought that had plagued the territory for the past 2 summers. It might be worth the ride out to see the place anyway. "Where exactly is this Riley ranch?" he asked. The morning sun was already hot when Sophia hitched her mare to the buckboard wagon. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her morning dress replaced with a practical skirt and blouse more suited to ranch work. She'd long ago abandoned the corsets and fripperies of her former life. The list of supplies needed in town was growing longer by the day: coffee, flour, sugar, ammunition for the rifle. She barely knew how to use necessities that required money she didn't have. She'd have to sell one of the cattle, perhaps 2, which meant fewer calves next spring, which meant less income next year. The cruel mathematics of survival had become her daily companion. As she gathered the reins, a movement in the distance caught her eye. A rider, silhouetted against the horizon, was approaching her ranch. Visitors were rare and rarely welcome. The land baron from the next county over had already made his intentions clear. He wanted her property and wouldn't pay a fair price. The bank had sent representatives with similar messages wrapped in more polite terms. Sophia reached for the rifle she kept in the wagon, checking that it was loaded as Thomas had taught her. Her hands trembled slightly, but her jaw was set in determination. The rider approached slowly, raising one hand in greeting as he came into clearer view. He sat tall in the saddle, his broad shoulders outlined against the morning sky. His horse, a muscular bay, moved with the easy gait of a well-trained mount. "Morning, madam," the stranger called, stopping his horse a respectful distance away. His voice was deep, with the slight drawl she'd come to associate with Texans. "Name's Samuel Dawson. Hope I'm not intruding." Sophia kept the rifle visible across her lap. "You're on Riley land, Mr. Dawson. What business brings you here?" Sam removed his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with sun-bleached strands. His face was tanned from years in the sun, with lines at the corners of his eyes that deepened when he smiled. "I heard in town this might be a ranch for sale. I'm looking to settle." A bitter laugh escaped Sophia's lips before she could contain it. "Then you heard wrong, Mr. Dawson. This land isn't for sale." Sam's eyes, blue as the Arizona sky, assessed the property and the woman before him with equal interest. The homestead showed signs of neglect, fence posts leaning, barn roof in need of repair. The woman, despite her defiant posture, looked exhausted, dark circles beneath eyes that had likely once sparkled. "No offense intended, madam," he said, replacing his hat. "I received word some months back from an acquaintance that there might be a place available in these parts." "Well, there isn't," Sophia replied sharply. "Not here anyway. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have business in town." Sam nodded, stepping his horse aside to let her pass. "Perhaps I could ride along. These roads can be dangerous for a woman alone." Her grip tightened on the reins. "I've been managing on my own for some time, Mr. Dawson. I don't need an escort." "As you wish." He tipped his hat. "But if you don't mind, I'd like to talk to you about possibly working for you. I'm handy with cattle and could help with repairs around your place." Sophia paused, suspicion warring with practicality. She desperately needed help, but pride and caution held her back. "I can't afford to hire anyone." "I'm not asking for much," Sam replied. "Room and board would do for now. I've saved enough to get by while I look for something permanent." The proposition seemed too convenient, too neat. "Why would a man like you work for nearly nothing on a struggling ranch?" Sam's expression remained open, honest. "Because I'm tired of drifting, madam. And everyone needs a place to start." Sophia studied him for a long moment. His clothes were worn but clean, his gun belt functional rather than flashy. He looked like a working cowboy, not a drifter or a gunslinger. Still, appearances could be deceiving. "You can ride alongside to town," she finally conceded. "We can discuss the rest later." The journey to Redemption Creek took 2 hours, filled mostly with silence. Sam didn't press for conversation, which Sophia appreciated. When he did speak, it was to point out a hawk circling overhead, or to comment on the condition of the cattle they passed grazing on neighboring ranches. The town itself was a collection of wooden buildings stretched along a single dusty street. The general store, saloon, blacksmith, and small bank formed the heart of the community. A church stood at one end, a schoolhouse at the other. Sophia pulled the wagon to a stop in front of Preston's general store. "I'll be a while," she told Sam. "You're free to go about your business." Sam dismounted and tied his horse to the hitching post. "I'll help you with your supplies when you're ready." Inside the store, Sophia was greeted by Martha Preston, the proprietor's wife. "Mrs. Riley, good to see you out and about," the older woman said kindly. "How are you holding up?" "Well enough, thank you." Sophia handed over her list, knowing she would have to reduce it further. "I'll need to put this on account for now. I'm selling a steer next week." Martha's smile faltered slightly. "I'm afraid Mr. Preston has asked me to tell you that we can't extend any more credit, Mrs. Riley. Your account is already—" She lowered her voice. "Quite substantial." Heat rushed to Sophia's face. She had known this day was coming, but had hoped to delay it a bit longer. "I see. Then I'll just take the flour and coffee for now. I can pay with—" Her hand went to the small coin purse in her pocket, knowing it contained barely enough. "Allow me," came Sam's voice from behind her. He stepped forward, placing several bills on the counter. "The lady will take everything on her list, Mrs. Preston." Sophia whirled to face him. "Mr. Dawson, I do not accept charity." "It's not charity," he replied calmly. "It's an advance on my wages, if you're still considering my offer of employment." Their eyes locked in silent battle, her pride against his stubborn generosity. Martha Preston looked uncomfortably between them. "You can repay me when you sell those cattle," Sam added, his voice low enough that only Sophia could hear. After a moment's hesitation, Sophia gave a curt nod. "Very well, but I expect work in return, Mr. Dawson. Hard work." "I wouldn't have it any other way, Mrs. Riley." The ride back to the ranch was again mostly silent, but this time the silence felt different, charged with unspoken questions and cautious possibilities. Sam handled the team, while Sophia sat beside him, her back straight, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "There's a small cabin behind the main house," she finally said, as they approached the ranch. "It was built for a ranch hand when my husband had grander plans. It's dusty but sound. I'm sure it will be fine. We'll discuss your duties and payment terms after supper." Sam nodded, understanding that she needed to establish boundaries, to maintain control of the situation. "Yes, madam." The cabin was indeed dusty but structurally solid. A narrow bed frame with a straw-filled mattress, a small table with one chair, and a pot-bellied stove were the only furnishings. Sam set down his saddlebags and bedroll, surveying what would be his home for the foreseeable future. Through the small window, he could see Sophia carrying supplies into the main house. She moved with purpose, her slim figure belying the strength it took to survive out here alone. There was something about her that intrigued him beyond the practical concerns of finding a ranch, a resilience in her eyes, despite the sadness that shadowed them. Sam had known his share of grief, his parents, his brother lost in the war, a sweetheart who couldn't wait for a man with wanderlust in his veins. But he sensed that Sophia Riley carried her sorrow differently, like armor, rather than a burden. He spent the remaining daylight hours examining the property, taking mental inventory of what needed immediate attention. The cattle looked healthy enough, though fewer in number than he'd expected. The barn needed significant repairs before winter. The fences were in disrepair, making it a wonder the cattle hadn't wandered off. As dusk fell, Sam returned to the main house. He washed his hands and face at the pump outside, ran his fingers through his hair, and knocked on the door. Sophia answered, the smell of cornbread and beans wafting out. "Come in, Mr. Dawson. Supper is ready." The interior of the house was simple, but revealed touches of refinement. A small bookshelf filled with volumes, a faded but good-quality rug, a china teacup displayed on a shelf. Signs of the Boston lady beneath the rancher's widow. They ate at a small table, the meal plain but filling. Sophia watched as Sam cleaned his plate efficiently, without rush or slovenliness. "Where are you from originally, Mr. Dawson?" she asked, breaking the long silence. "Tennessee, left when I was 17 to find work in Texas." He took a sip of water. "Been moving ever since." "And now you want to stop moving?" Sam met her gaze. "Yes, madam. I've seen enough of the trail to last a lifetime." "Why here? Why my ranch?" He considered his answer carefully. "I heard about a small place that might be available in good cattle country. I've saved enough over the years to start something modest. When I found out the situation was different than I'd been told, I still wanted to see it through." Sophia's eyes narrowed slightly. "And what do you expect to gain by working for room and board on a failing ranch?" "I didn't say it was failing," Sam replied evenly. "I see good land with potential. Maybe I can help restore it to what your husband envisioned." At the mention of Thomas, Sophia's face closed like a book snapping shut. "My husband had grand visions but limited practical knowledge. That's why we're in this situation." "I'm sorry for your loss," Sam said quietly. "I don't need your pity, Mr. Dawson. I need your labor if we're to continue with this arrangement." Sam nodded, recognizing the walls she'd built. "Fair enough. I'll start with the north fence line tomorrow. The cattle are finding their way through to the Peterson property." "You've been busy today," Sophia observed. "I like to know what I'm getting into." After supper, they sat at the table with a small lamp between them, outlining terms. Sam would work the ranch for room, board, and a small weekly stipend when cattle were sold. In return, Sophia would provide supplies and autonomy to make necessary repairs. "One more thing," she added as they concluded their agreement. "This is a business arrangement only, Mr. Dawson. I expect you to remember that." Sam met her gaze steadily. "I understand completely, Mrs. Riley." The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm. Sam rose before dawn each day, tending to the horses and cattle before tackling the endless repairs. Sophia maintained the house, garden, and finances, joining him for the cattle work when needed. They took their meals together in the main house, their conversations gradually evolving from terse exchanges about ranch business to more comfortable dialogue. Sam learned that Sophia had been the daughter of a successful Boston merchant, educated at a finishing school, expected to marry within her social circle. Instead, she had fallen in love with Thomas Riley, a charming dreamer passing through on business, and scandalized her family by eloping west with him. "Did you regret it?" Sam asked one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the desert in fiery hues. Leaving everything behind? Sophia was silent for a long moment. "No," she finally said. "I regret that it ended too soon, that Thomas didn't live to see his dreams realized, but I never regretted choosing him." Sam nodded, understanding the complexity behind her simple answer. "He must have been quite a man to win your heart." "He was." A small smile touched her lips, then faded. "But he's gone now, and dreams don't feed cattle or fix fences." The summer heat intensified as July turned to August. Sam worked from sunrise until the heat became unbearable around midday, then resumed in the late afternoon until dusk. His skin darkened further, his shirts often soaked through with sweat. Sophia found herself watching him sometimes from the window as he worked, telling herself she was merely monitoring his progress. The north fence was repaired, then the west. The barn roof was patched, the cattle rounded up and counted, strays retrieved from neighboring properties. Sam seemed tireless, working with an efficiency that made Sophia realize how much Thomas, for all his enthusiasm, had lacked in practical ranching knowledge. One blazing afternoon, Sophia brought a jug of water to where Sam was digging post holes for a new corral. He'd removed his shirt in the heat, and she found herself momentarily transfixed by the play of muscles across his back and shoulders as he worked the shovel into the unyielding earth. "Water," she called, her voice sounding strange to her own ears. Sam turned, wiping sweat from his brow with his forearm. "Much obliged." He took the jug, drinking deeply, water spilling down his chin and neck. Sophia looked away, suddenly uncomfortable. "The corral is coming along well. Should be finished by tomorrow. Then we can start breaking that Mustang I caught last week. He'll make a good cow pony with some training." "You intend to stay for the breaking then?" Sophia asked, trying to sound casual. "It's been nearly 2 months since you arrived." Sam handed back the water jug, his fingers brushing hers briefly. "Unless you're planning to dismiss me, Mrs. Riley." "No," she said quickly. "Your work has been satisfactory." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "High praise indeed." That night, Sophia lay awake in her bed, troubled by emotions she'd thought safely buried beneath the old oak tree. There was something about Samuel Dawson that unsettled her carefully constructed defenses, his quiet competence, his respectful manner that never crossed into condescension. The way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, all of it combined to create a warmth in her chest that she recognized and feared. "It's merely gratitude," she whispered to herself in the darkness. Nothing more. But gratitude didn't explain the quickening of her pulse when their hands accidentally touched, or how she found herself taking more care with her appearance each morning, or why she lingered over their evening conversations on the porch. Outside, the moon cast silver light across the land that was slowly transforming under Sam's careful attention. The ranch was beginning to resemble what Thomas had described in his enthusiastic plans, not through dreams, but through hard work and practical knowledge. The following week brought unexpected visitors. Sophia was hanging laundry when she heard approaching horses. 3 riders appeared, led by a large man with a florid face whom she recognized as Harold Walsh, owner of the largest ranch in the county. "Mrs. Riley," Walsh called out, not bothering to dismount. "Fine day, isn't it?" Sophia nodded cautiously. "Mr. Walsh, what brings you to Riley Ranch?" "Just passing through, checking boundaries." His small eyes surveyed the property with barely disguised interest. "I see you've made some improvements. Must have hired help." "I have a ranch hand, yes." Walsh's smile didn't reach his eyes. Smart move. Woman alone can't manage cattle country. Speaking of which, my offer still stands. $500 for the whole spread. Save yourself a lot of trouble. Before Sophia could respond, Sam emerged from the barn, leading the partially broken Mustang. He assessed the situation with a glance and walked casually to stand beside Sophia. "Gentlemen," he said evenly, though his hand rested not far from his holstered pistol. "Something we can help you with?" Walsh's expression soured. "You must be the hired help. Samuel Dawson, isn't it? Heard you've been making quite an impression around these parts." "Just doing my job, Mr. Walsh." "Well, I was just telling Mrs. Riley here that my offer to purchase this property remains open. Times are hard, and smaller spreads like this one often don't survive the winter." Sam's expression remained neutral. "Fortunately, Riley Ranch is doing just fine. We appreciate your concern, but Mrs. Riley isn't interested in selling." Walsh's face reddened further. "I believe the lady can speak for herself." "Indeed I can," Sophia said, stepping forward. "And Mr. Dawson is correct. My ranch is not for sale, Mr. Walsh. Not now, not ever." The large man's jovial facade dropped completely. "You're making a mistake, Mrs. Riley. A woman has no place running a cattle ranch. Sooner or later, you'll fail, and my offer won't be so generous then." "I believe the lady asked you to leave," Sam said, his voice quiet but carrying a steel edge that made Walsh's men shift uncomfortably in their saddles. For a tense moment, it seemed Walsh might escalate the confrontation. Then he forced a laugh. "No need to get prickly, just being neighborly." He gathered his reins. "Think about my offer, Mrs. Riley. Winter's coming faster than you think." The three riders departed, dust rising in their wake. Sophia realized she'd been holding her breath and exhaled slowly. "Thank you," she said to Sam, "though I could have handled it." "I know you could have." His eyes still followed the retreating riders. "But Walsh is dangerous. He's not used to being refused. He's been trying to buy this land since before Thomas died. Says it's the best water access in the county." "He's right about that." Sam turned to her. "Which is why we need to be vigilant. Men like Walsh don't take no for an answer easily." "We?" Sophia questioned, looking up at him. "If you'll have me," Sam replied, meeting her gaze. "I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to." Something in his tone made her heart beat faster. For the first time since Thomas's death, Sophia felt the stirring of hope, not just for the ranch's survival, but for something she'd thought forever lost. "I want you to stay," she said softly. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, before Sam nodded and returned to the Mustang, which was growing restless. Sophia watched him go, a strange mixture of fear and anticipation swirling in her chest. That night, a thunderstorm rolled across the desert, a rare and violent display of nature's power. Lightning split the sky, thunder rattled the windows, and rain came down in blinding sheets. Sophia sat by the window, watching the deluge with mixed emotions. The ranch desperately needed the rain, but the dry ground couldn't absorb it fast enough, creating flash floods that could wash out fences and drown cattle. A knock at the door startled her. She opened it to find Sam standing there, drenched to the skin. "The wash is flooding," he shouted over the storm. "Some of the cattle are stranded on the far side. I need your help." Without hesitation, Sophia grabbed her rain slicker and followed him out into the tempest. They raced to the barn, where the horses were already saddled, nervous and skittish from the thunder. "Stay close to me," Sam instructed as they mounted. "The ground's treacherous when it floods like this." They rode through the driving rain toward the eastern pasture, where a normally dry creek bed had transformed into a raging torrent. On the opposite bank, a dozen cattle were huddled together on a strip of land that was growing narrower by the minute. "We need to get them to higher ground," Sam shouted, pointing to a ridge beyond the trapped cattle. "There's a crossing about a quarter-mile upstream where we can get across." The crossing was itself becoming dangerous, water rushing over what was normally an easy ford. Sam went first, his horse picking its way carefully across the submerged rocks. Sophia followed, her heart pounding as her mare stumbled once, recovering quickly. On the far side, they circled behind the stranded cattle. Working in tandem, they began driving the frightened animals toward a path that led upward to safety. The rain was relentless, visibility poor, but they moved methodically, using voice and pressure to guide the cattle away from the rising water. As the last steer scrambled up the path, Sophia's horse lost its footing on the slick ground. She felt herself falling, then the shocking cold of the water as she was thrown into the edge of the flood. The current immediately grabbed her, pulling her toward the main channel. "Sam!" she cried out, fighting to keep her head above water. In an instant, he was off his horse and racing along the bank. Sophia struggled against the current, but her sodden clothes and boots weighed her down. She saw Sam plunge into the water ahead of her. Positioning himself to intercept her path, the force of the water slammed her into him, nearly knocking them both under. His arms locked around her waist, and with strength born of desperation, he fought the current, inching them toward the bank. Sophia clung to him, coughing and sputtering as water washed over her face. With a final heave, Sam pulled them onto solid ground, both collapsing in the mud, gasping for breath. Rain continued to pelt them as they lay there, his arms still wrapped protectively around her. "Are you hurt?" he panted, his face inches from hers. Sophia shook her head, too breathless to speak. She was suddenly, acutely aware of his body pressed against hers, the warmth of him even through their cold, wet clothes. "We need to get back," Sam said, helping her to her feet, "before this gets worse." He whistled for the horses, which had retreated to higher ground. Only his mount returned. Her mare had apparently fled toward home. Without discussion, Sam lifted Sophia onto his horse and climbed up behind her. The ride back was slow and treacherous. Sophia sat cradled against Sam's chest, his arms around her to hold the reins. Despite the cold rain, she felt heat radiating from his body, a steady heartbeat against her back. By the time they reached the ranch house, the storm was beginning to abate. Sam helped Sophia dismount, her legs wobbly beneath her. "You need to get out of those wet clothes before you catch your death," he said, leading her to the porch. "So do you," she replied, teeth chattering. Inside, Sophia lit the lamps while Sam built up the fire in the stove. "I'll fetch dry clothes from my cabin," he said, turning to go. "Wait," Sophia caught his arm. "You'll just get soaked again. I have some of Thomas's things. They might fit you." She disappeared into the bedroom, returning with a flannel shirt and work pants. "These should do. You can change in there while I make coffee." When Sam emerged from the bedroom, Sophia had changed into a simple dress, her wet hair hanging loose down her back. She handed him a steaming cup, their fingers brushing in the exchange. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving my life." Sam took a sip of coffee, his eyes never leaving hers. "You would have done the same for me." "Yes," she acknowledged, "but still, thank you." They stood before the stove, the heat gradually warming their chilled bodies. Outside, the storm continued to recede, leaving behind a gentle pattering on the roof. "Your husband's clothes fit well enough," Sophia observed, noticing how the shirt stretched across Sam's broader shoulders. "They'll do until mine dry." He hesitated. "I hope you don't mind my wearing them." "No?" She smiled faintly. "Thomas would have approved. He always believed in practical solutions." "You must miss him very much." Sophia's smile faded. She turned to look out the window at the rain-soaked night. "There are moments when the loss feels as fresh as the day he died, and others when I realize I've gone hours without thinking of him, which brings its own kind of guilt." "Grief isn't a straight line," Sam said softly. "It circles back on itself, comes in waves." She looked at him with surprise. "You sound like you speak from experience. I lost my brother in the war, my parents not long after. Grief and I are old acquaintances." Sophia studied his face in the lamplight, seeing for the first time the depth of understanding in his eyes. "Yet, you keep going. What's the alternative?" He set down his empty cup. "We live, we lose, we continue. And sometimes, if we're fortunate, we find something worth building again." Their eyes met and held. In that moment, something shifted between them, a recognition, a possibility neither was quite ready to name. Sophia was the first to look away. "It's late. You should get some rest. The rain's nearly stopped. I should check on the cattle once more before turning in." "Of course." She walked him to the door, suddenly awkward. "Good night, Mr. Dawson." He paused in the doorway. "I think, after today, you might call me Sam." A small smile touched her lips. "Good night, Sam." "Good night, Sophia." After he left, Sophia stood for a long time at the window, watching his figure move toward the barn, something unfamiliar and frightening and wonderful unfolding in the heart she'd tried so hard to bury. September brought cooler temperatures and changing colors to the desert landscape. The ranch thrived under Sam's care, with repaired fences, healthy cattle, and a new corral where he worked daily with the Mustang, now responding well to training. Sophia found herself looking forward to their evening conversations on the porch, where they would discuss the day's work, future plans for the ranch, or sometimes just sit in comfortable silence watching the sunset. She began to share stories of her life in Boston, of meeting Thomas, of the early hopeful days on the ranch. In turn, Sam told her of his years on cattle drives, the characters he'd met, the places he'd seen. Something was growing between them, something neither acknowledged aloud, but both felt with increasing intensity. Their hands would brush when passing dishes at supper, their eyes would meet and linger, their conversations would sometimes trail into loaded silences. Sophia tried to fight it, reminding herself each night of the box buried beneath the oak tree, of the vow she'd made never to risk her heart again. But Sam's steady presence, his quiet strength, his unexpected gentleness, were wearing down her defenses day by day. One crisp morning, Sophia was hanging laundry when she noticed Sam riding in from the eastern pasture earlier than expected. Something about his posture alarmed her. He sat stiffly in the saddle, one hand pressed against his side. She set down her basket and hurried to meet him. As he dismounted, she saw the blood staining his shirt. "What happened?" she asked, reaching toward him instinctively. "Ran into some trouble," he grimaced. "Caught 3 men cutting our fence line. Walsh's men, I'd wager, though they weren't wearing his brand." "You're hurt." Her voice rose with concern. "Just a flesh wound." "One of them had a knife." Sam tried to straighten and winced. "I'll be fine. Inside, now." Sophia's tone brooked no argument. She helped him into the house and onto a chair. "Take off your shirt." Sam complied with a wry smile. "Yes, madam." The wound was a deep gash along his ribs, still bleeding freely. Sophia gathered water, clean cloths, and the whiskey bottle she kept for medicinal purposes. "This will hurt," she warned, pouring whiskey over the cut. Sam hissed through clenched teeth but didn't flinch. "Not my first knife wound." "That's hardly reassuring." She began cleaning the injury with gentle hands. "What happened to the men?" "They ran off when I drew my gun. Didn't recognize any of them, but they knew to target the water access points." His breathing quickened slightly as her fingers worked near the deepest part of the cut. "Walsh is getting desperate. Hold still. This needs stitches." Sophia threaded a needle, her hand steady despite her racing heart. "What can we do about Walsh?" "Not much without proof." Sam watched her face as she prepared to stitch his wound. "You've done this before." "Thomas was forever injuring himself. I learned out of necessity." She began the first stitch, apologizing softly when he tensed. "What if they come back? Or worse, what if Walsh escalates further? I'll speak to Sheriff Miller next time we're in town. Make sure he's aware of what's happening." Sam's eyes never left her face as she worked. "I won't let anything happen to you or the ranch, Sophia." The intimacy of the moment, her hands on his bare skin, his unwavering gaze, the quiet intensity of his promise made her pause, needle in midair. "You can't guarantee that." "No," he agreed, "but I can promise to try with everything I have." Their eyes held, and Sophia felt something inside her, shifting, crumbling the walls she'd built around her heart, developing fractures she couldn't repair. She resumed stitching, focusing on the task to maintain her composure. "Why do you care so much about this ranch? About—" She couldn't bring herself to finish the question. Sam was silent until she tied off the last stitch and began bandaging the wound. "Because this is the first place that's felt like home since I was a boy," he finally said. "Because here, I'm not just passing through. I'm building something that matters." His hand came up to cover hers where it rested on the bandage. "And because you matter, Sophia. More than I expected. More than you might be ready to hear." Sophia's breath caught in her throat. She should pull away, remind him of the boundaries she'd established, retreat behind the safety of her grief. Instead, she found herself turning her hand beneath his, their fingers intertwining. "Sam," she whispered, his name both warning and invitation. He leaned forward slowly, giving her every chance to withdraw. When their lips met, it was gentle, questioning, a whisper of contact that asked rather than demanded. Sophia felt a rush of warmth, of rightness that terrified her. She pulled back abruptly, rising to her feet. "I can't," she said, voice trembling. "I'm sorry, but I can't do this." Sam didn't try to stop her as she fled from the house, but the concern in his eyes followed her into the blinding sunlight outside. Sophia's feet carried her instinctively to the old oak tree, to the spot where months ago she had buried more than mementos. Kneeling on the ground, she pressed her hands against the earth, tears falling freely now. "I promised," she whispered brokenly. "I promised I wouldn't do this again, Thomas. I can't bear to lose someone again." But even as she spoke the words, she knew she was already losing the battle. Sam had worked his way into her life, into the empty spaces left by grief, bringing warmth where there had been only cold numbness. That evening, Sophia did not join Sam for supper. She left food on the stove for him and retreated to her bedroom, claiming a headache. The following days were marked by careful politeness, by conversations limited to ranch business, by deliberate distance. Sam respected her withdrawal, never mentioning the kiss, never pushing for more than she was willing to give. But Sophia caught him watching her sometimes, with a patience that suggested he was willing to wait as long as necessary. A week passed in this fragile detente. Then, early one morning, Sophia was awakened by the smell of smoke. She ran outside in her nightgown to find the barn engulfed in flames, the fire hungrily consuming the dry wood. Sam was already there, leading frightened horses from the inferno. "Get water!" he shouted when he saw her. "Wake the neighbors!" Sophia ran to the well, filling buckets, but it was clear the barn couldn't be saved. The best they could hope for was to prevent the fire from spreading to the house or the surrounding grassland. By dawn, the barn was a smoldering ruin. All the animals had been saved, but the structure itself, along with stored hay and equipment, was gone. Sam's face was blackened with soot, his hands blistered from the rescue efforts. "It was deliberate," he said grimly, showing Sophia an oil-soaked rag he'd found at the barn's edge. "Someone set this fire." "Walsh," Sophia whispered, shock giving way to anger. "This is his doing." Sam nodded. "Likely so, though proving it will be difficult." "What do we do now?" His eyes met hers, determination hardening his features. "We rebuild, and we watch our backs." Word of the fire spread quickly. By midday, neighbors began arriving with offers of help, fence posts, hay, temporary shelter for the horses. Sophia was touched by the support, having always felt somewhat isolated in her grief. "People respect hard work and resilience," Sam told her, as they watched 3 neighboring ranchers erecting a temporary shelter for the livestock. "They've seen what you've accomplished here, how you've held on despite everything." "What we've accomplished," Sophia corrected him. "None of this would have been possible without you." Their eyes met briefly before turning back to the work at hand. Something had shifted again between them, the fire and its aftermath bringing them back into alignment. The shared crisis bridging the distance Sophia had tried to maintain. That night, exhausted and soot-stained, they sat on the porch steps, too tired for proper supper, but sharing a loaf of bread and cold meat. "The sheriff will be out tomorrow to investigate," Sam said. "Not that I expect much to come of it. Walsh is too powerful in these parts." "Then what's our next move?" Sophia asked. Sam looked at her thoughtfully. "Our? Not so long ago, you were reminding me this was your ranch and your decisions." Sophia met his gaze steadily. "Things change." A small smile touched his lips. "Yes, they do." He looked out at the darkened ranch, the makeshift shelter where the barn had stood. "We rebuild stronger. We show Walsh and anyone else watching that it takes more than fire to drive us off this land. And if he tries again, then we face it, together." The word hung between them, laden with meaning beyond the immediate crisis. Sophia found herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by an invisible thread she no longer had the strength to resist. "Sam," she said softly, "about what happened before. You don't need to explain. His voice was gentle. I understand loss, Sophia. I understand fear. Do you? She looked down at her hands, callous now from months of ranch work. I made a promise to myself the day I buried my mementos of Thomas. I swore I would never risk my heart again, never open myself to that kind of pain. What did you bury? Sam asked quietly. His wedding ring, our letters, a portrait. Sophia's voice faltered. And my heart, or so I thought. Sam's hand covered hers, warm and steady. You can't actually bury your heart, Sophia. It continues beating, whether you want it to or not. I'm afraid, she admitted in a whisper. Not of Walsh or fires or losing the ranch. I'm afraid of feeling again, of caring so deeply that loss could destroy me. Loss is the price we pay for love, Sam said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. But living without love, that's a different kind of death. Sophia turned to him then, seeing in the moonlight the truth of his words reflected in his eyes. She reached up hesitantly, her fingers brushing his cheek. I'm not asking for promises, Sam continued. I'm just asking for a chance. In answer, Sophia leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was different this time, not questioning, but affirming, not hesitant, but certain. Sam's arms enfolded her, drawing her closer, and Sophia felt something long dormant within her, flaring to life. When they finally parted, both breathless, Sam rested his forehead against hers. I've been wanting to do that since the first day I saw you standing defiantly with that rifle across your lap. Sophia laughed softly. Even then? When I was all dirt and distrust? Especially then. His smile was tender. You were magnificent. Still are. They remained on the porch steps late into the night, talking, touching, discovering each other in ways that went beyond physical awareness. Sam spoke of his dreams for a permanent home, for a ranch of his own, for someone to share the sunrises and sunsets with. Sophia shared her fears of loving again, of the vulnerability it created, but also her growing realization that closing herself off wasn't the answer. One day at a time, Sam promised as the eastern sky began to lighten. That's all I ask? Sophia nodded, resting her head against his shoulder. One day at a time. The investigation into the barn fire yielded exactly what they had expected: insufficient evidence to charge anyone. Sheriff Miller, a decent man but wary of crossing Harold Walsh, documented the incident but took no further action. He knows, Sam told Sophia after the sheriff left. He just can't or won't do anything about it. Then we're on our own, Sophia concluded. Not entirely, we have allies. Sam gestured to where neighboring ranchers were helping construct a new, larger barn. Walsh isn't as popular as he thinks. His strong-arm tactics have made enemies. Over the next weeks, the barn rose steadily from the ashes, stronger than before. Sam and Sophia worked side by side with volunteers, their partnership evolving naturally from professional to personal. Each evening found them together on the porch, talking, planning, sometimes just sitting in comfortable silence as the stars emerged overhead. October brought the first hint of winter to the air. The new barn was complete, the cattle healthy, the ranch more prosperous than it had been since Thomas's death. And something else was flourishing too, the tentative romance between Sophia and Sam, growing stronger with each passing day. They were careful, respectful of the gossip such relationships could generate in small communities. In public, they maintained a professional demeanor. But privately they were learning each other, Sam discovering Sophia's dry wit and hidden passions, Sophia uncovering the gentle heart beneath Sam's weathered exterior. One crisp morning, Sam suggested they ride out to check the most distant pasture. The grass is still good there, and we should move some of the herd before winter sets in. They rode side by side, the desert landscape opening around them. It was a perfect day, clear blue sky, gentle breeze, the scent of sage in the air. I used to hate this land, Sophia confessed as they rode. When I first arrived from Boston, it seemed so harsh, so unforgiving. I couldn't understand what Thomas saw in it. And now? Sam asked. She smiled, gesturing to the beauty surrounding them. Now I see it through different eyes. There's a strength here, a resilience. It doesn't give its treasures easily, but when it does, They're all the more precious for the effort, Sam finished, his eyes on her rather than the landscape. They reached the distant pasture by midday and dismounted near a small stream to rest and water the horses. Sophia spread a blanket while Sam unpacked the lunch they had brought. "This spot reminds me of where Thomas proposed," Sophia said, looking around at the sheltered hollow. "He brought me out here, told me all his dreams for the ranch, for our future." Sam sat beside her, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think he'd be happy with how things have turned out?" "Not with his dying, certainly," Sophia replied with a sad smile. "But with the ranch? Yes, I think he'd be pleased to see it thriving." "And with us?" Sam asked quietly. Sophia considered the question carefully. "Thomas wanted my happiness above all else. In his final days, he made me promise to find joy again, though at the time, I couldn't imagine how." She reached for Sam's hand. "I think he'd be glad I found someone who understands the land as he did, who works it with respect and vision. Someone who helped me remember how to live, not just survive." Sam brought her hand to his lips. "I wish I could have known him. You would have liked each other, I think. You're different in many ways, but alike in the ones that matter." They ate in companionable silence, watching a hawk circle lazily overhead. After lunch, Sam suggested they walk a bit before checking the cattle. "There's something I want to show you," he said, leading her toward a rise overlooking the stream. At the top of the small hill stood a lone cottonwood tree, its leaves golden in the autumn light. Beneath it, wildflowers still bloomed despite the late season. "I found this place the second week I was here," Sam told her. "Reminded me of a spot my father used to take us fishing when I was a boy." Sophia touched the rough bark of the tree. "It's beautiful. I thought—" Sam hesitated, uncharacteristically nervous. "I thought it might be a good place for a house someday. The view, the water nearby, sheltered from the worst winds." Sophia turned to him, suddenly understanding. "A house?" Sam took both her hands in his. "Sophia, I came here looking for land to start my own ranch. I found something far more valuable, a partnership, a purpose, a love I wasn't expecting." He drew a deep breath. "I know it's soon, I know there's still healing to be done, but I want to build a future here with you, if you'll have me." Tears welled in Sophia's eyes. "Are you proposing, Samuel Dawson?" "I'm proposing a beginning," he said softly. "Marriage when you're ready, not before. A home built together, at whatever pace feels right." Sophia looked out over the land, their land, and felt the final walls around her heart crumbling away. "Yes," she whispered, turning back to him. "Yes, to all of it." Sam's face lit with a joy that took her breath away. He gathered her in his arms, lifting her off her feet in an exuberant embrace. When he set her down, his expression grew serious again. "There's something I need to do first," he said. "What's that?" "I need to dig up what you buried." Sophia knew immediately what he meant. "The box under the oak tree?" Sam nodded. "You can't move forward while your heart is still buried in the past. We'll honor Thomas's memory, but it's time to bring your heart back into the light." That evening, as the sun began its descent, they stood together beneath the old oak tree, Sam with a shovel, Sophia with a mixture of anxiety and anticipation coursing through her. "Are you sure about this?" she asked. "I'm sure if you are," he replied. "It's your decision, Sophia." She thought for a long moment, then nodded. "Do it." Sam began to dig carefully, mindful of the box that lay beneath. The earth yielded easily to his steady efforts, as if knowing it was time to release what had been entrusted to its keeping. Within minutes, the edge of the wooden box appeared. Sam set aside the shovel and knelt, using his hands to free it from the surrounding soil. Dirt embedded beneath his fingernails, stained his skin, but he worked with gentle persistence until the box lay revealed. He lifted it carefully and offered it to Sophia. "This belongs to you." With trembling hands, she took the box, brushing away clinging earth. It was smaller than she remembered, weather-worn despite its months of burial. "Open it," Sam encouraged softly. Sophia hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside lay the items exactly as she had placed them. Thomas's wedding ring, the bundle of letters tied with faded ribbon, the small portrait in its silver frame, but they seemed different somehow, less heavy with grief, more like treasured mementos of a chapter in her life, rather than anchors dragging her into the past. She lifted the portrait, smiling at Thomas's handsome, eager face. He was so full of dreams. He must have been remarkable to have won your heart, Sam said, no jealousy in his voice, only respect. He was. Sophia replaced the portrait and closed the box. But that chapter has ended. It's time to begin a new one. Sam took her free hand, his own still bearing the soil that had covered her buried heart. Together? Together, she affirmed. As they walked back to the house, the box tucked safely under Sophia's arm, the setting sun painted the desert in hues of gold and crimson. The ranch spread before them, no longer a burden of grief, but a promise of future happiness. Sophia knew there would be challenges ahead. Walsh remained a threat, winter would test their resources, and the ghosts of the past would sometimes whisper in quiet moments. But for the first time since Thomas's death, she faced the future with hope rather than resignation. Sam's hand in hers was warm, strong, steady like the man himself. Not a replacement for what she had lost, but a new love, different yet equally precious. "What are you thinking?" he asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Sophia smiled up at him, her heart no longer buried full and light. "I'm thinking that some treasures are worth digging for." Winter arrived with unusual ferocity that year. Snow blanketed the desert, transforming the landscape into an alien white expanse. Sophia and Sam faced the challenges together, breaking ice from water troughs, ensuring the cattle had access to feed, keeping the fires burning in both house and barn. Their wedding was a small affair in early December, held in the Redemption Creek Church, with neighbors and friends in attendance. Sophia wore a simple blue dress rather than traditional white, a nod to her status as a widow, beginning anew rather than a first-time bride. Sam stood tall and proud in a new suit, his weathered face alight with happiness as they spoke their vows. Harold Walsh made one final attempt to drive them off the land in January, sending men to rustle cattle during a blizzard. But Sam, with the help of neighboring ranchers who had grown tired of Walsh's tactics, tracked the stolen herd and recovered it. The evidence was irrefutable this time, and even Sheriff Miller couldn't ignore it. Walsh faced charges and, more damaging to a man of his temperament, public humiliation. By spring, the ranch was truly thriving. The cattle had weathered the winter well, new calves dotted the pastures, and Sam had begun construction on the house by the cottonwood tree. Sophia discovered she was expecting their first child, news that brought tears of joy to Sam's eyes when she told him. One warm evening in May, as they sat on the porch of what would soon be their old house, Sophia resting her head on Sam's shoulder, his hand gentle on her growing belly, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. "I thought my life was over when Thomas died," she said softly. "I was so determined never to risk my heart again." Sam pressed a kiss to her hair. "And I'm grateful every day that you changed your mind." "You didn't give me much choice," she teased. "You just kept showing up, being steady, making me remember what it felt like to hope." "I knew from the moment I saw you that you were worth waiting for," Sam replied, "even with that rifle pointed in my general direction." Sophia laughed, the sound carrying across the peaceful ranch. "You were persistent, I'll give you that, digging up what I'd tried so hard to bury." "Some things aren't meant to stay buried," Sam said, his hand finding hers, "especially not hearts as remarkable as yours." As the sun set on the land they both loved, Sophia Riley Dawson felt the life growing within her, the future taking shape, built on foundations of both past and present. Thomas would always have a place in her memory, honored and cherished for the love they had shared, but her heart beat now, with a new love, strong and enduring as the land around them. She had tried to bury her heart beneath the old oak tree, believing it the only way to survive unbearable loss. But Sam had dug it out with his hands patient, persistent, gentle, returning it to where it belonged, not to replace what she had lost, but to help her discover what she could still find. Love unexpected, joy renewed, a future unfolding like the desert after rain. "I love you, Samuel Dawson," she whispered as the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. His arms tightened around her. "And I love you, Sophia Dawson. Yesterday, today, and all our tomorrows." 5 years later, the house by the cottonwood tree stood completed, a testament to Sam's craftsmanship and vision. The Riley-Dawson Ranch had become one of the most successful in the territory, known for quality cattle and fair business practices. Sophia stood on the porch, watching Sam teaching their 4-year-old son, Thomas, to ride his pony in the fenced yard. Their 2-year-old daughter, Eleanor, played nearby, building precarious towers with wooden blocks. Sophia's hand rested on her rounded belly, where their 3rd child grew steadily. The box she had once buried now sat on a shelf in their bedroom, no longer a repository of grief, but a treasured connection to the past. Beside it stood newer mementos, a family portrait, Sam's first pair of spurs, a pressed flower from their wedding day. Life had taught Sophia Riley Dawson that love was worth the risk, that hearts were meant for living, not burying. Each day brought new challenges, new joys, new reasons to be grateful for the stubborn cowboy who had refused to let her hide from life. As Sam looked up and caught her eye, his smile as warm and reassuring as ever, Sophia sent a silent thanks to the forces that had brought him to her door that day, that had given her the courage to let him in, that had shown her it was never too late to begin again. Her heart, once buried beneath cold earth, now beat strong and steady in the sunlight of a love she hadn't believed possible, proof that some treasures, once uncovered, shine all the brighter for having been hidden away.